Good morning. This is the morning news right here on CNN News 18. My name is Toya Singh, and over the next 1 hour, we're going to walk you through all of the country's top stories. Let's start with the story that's actually playing out in the northeast as we speak. We're learning right now that regions in the country are facing a serious challenge with a sharp escalation in drug abuse and distribution. And what we're taking a look at today is an investigation that we've conducted on India's drug menace, particularly in the northeast. A colleague of ours visited the Indo-Myanmar border in Mizoram to uncover what he says is a smuggling of a new drug that is causing havoc in India. The drug itself is known as Yaba. This drug is a deadly combination of methamphetamine and caffeine. It's packed in brightly colored pills. These are deceptive as they are dangerous. It originates from Southeast Asia. It's a potent stimulant first found its footing in the underground party circuits of Thailand and Myanmar, and it's slowly right now making its way across the globe. In India, as we're focusing on today, we'll be taking a look at how it's making its way inside the country. Now, first we want to bring you this investigation, then we'll connect with the reporter who conducted it to ask him more.
One of India's seven sisters, Mizoram, has become the gateway to the fastest growing drug trades in the country. Fueled by porous borders with Myanmar, Golden Triangle syndicates and local insurgent networks, the region is grappling with a narcotics crisis that has far-reaching consequences. From heroin smuggled across international borders to synthetic drugs manufactured in clandestine makeshift laboratories.
More than 200 kgs of methamphetamine has been seized in the past 2 years in this state by the police. And only till this year, over 1,000 kgs of caffeine has already been seized. Meth and caffeine is the combination that makes tablets known as Yaba, which are fast replacing other party drugs like ecstasy and MDMA. But what is Yaba and what is its story? We are in Mizoram, and for the next 4 days, we'll be traveling extensively to the border areas and to remote areas in the Myanmar-Mizo border to find out what are the routes from where Yaba is transported and smuggled into India, and what is the story of Yaba.
Yaba, also known as dragon pill, horse drug and crazy pill, a deadly combination of methamphetamine and caffeine packed into brightly colored pills. These are as deceptive as they are dangerous. Originating from Southeast Asia, this potent stimulant first found its footing in the underground party circuits of Thailand and Myanmar. Now it's making waves across the globe, including India, as a new age party drug that promises an intense high. But what makes Yaba so popular? First is its affordability and availability, and second, its effects are highly sought after in party scenes. Euphoria, increased energy, and a distorted sense of reality. But the high comes with a heavy cost: addiction, paranoia, hallucinations, and even permanent brain damage.
These are like highly stimulant drugs. So when a person uses maybe smoke or inhale or inject or take a tablet of, say, Yaba, it increases your heart rate as well as your blood pressure. So what that can lead to is, the small blood vessels in the brain, they can rupture, causing stroke in some of the patients.
From the dense jungles of Myanmar to the neon-lit clubs of New York and London, Yaba is no longer just a regional problem. But how does this drug make its way from clandestine makeshift laboratories of Myanmar to India, and then to the streets of Central Asia, Europe, and even the United States?
Well, we are in Champai right now, one of the 11 districts of Mizoram and one on the easternmost border. The jungle that you see behind me is Myanmar, and I am right now standing in India. I am right now standing in Tiao River, which you can see has almost dried down, which also makes Champai one of the most prominent routes for the smugglers to cross over into India with Yaba.
CNN News 18 traveled to over a dozen villages along the Indo-Myanmar border and managed to track down a woman who was deeply entrenched in the Yaba smuggling into India.
Yes, Yaba is coming into India a lot. The number is very high. From what I have heard, Yaba is mainly produced in Tahan district of Myanmar. I too have transported Yaba tablets from Myanmar into India at least 3 times. Some of the popular routes lie alongside Darkhai, Fatlang, and areas like Rikatwar that are close to India. Lilat is another area. It is not easy to transport in India given the security setup. I have heard that the inflow of these drugs has increased into India from Myanmar. The main reason for drugs smuggling is profit it gets us. For one trip that may easily contain 2 to 3 lakh Yaba tablets, the carriers are paid around 1 to 2 lakhs.
Law enforcement agencies believe that the organized crime syndicates are exploiting international trade routes to push this pill into global markets, turning it into a multi-billion-dollar industry.
About 500 kilometers of border we have with Myanmar, the state of Mizoram. And in this 40% is Tiao River. And the rest of it is densely covered forest. And Tiao River is usually dry in non-monsoon seasons. So any vehicle can just pass through and come into it. Indians can go into Myanmar 16 kilometers inside of it on foot, and the same thing is for the Myanmaris. So Myanmaris can get into Indian territory up to 16 kilometers on foot without a need of any valid visa. So that has been a great challenge because no one can stop the person as such. So last year, the whole year, we got about 250 kgs of Yaba tablets. And this year so far, we have seized more than 600 kgs.
In the lab, a single pill can cost as little as 40 to 50 rupees, but once it crosses into India, the price doubles to 80 to 100 rupees per pill. By the time it hits metropolitan cities like Delhi, Mumbai or Bengaluru, Yaba's price skyrockets to 500 rupees at the very least. Growing demand means one pill could cost 800 to 1000 rupees per pill as well. It's not limited to pushing drugs and making money off it. Authorities suspect that proceeds from Yaba trafficking are empowering criminal networks and exacerbating violence in the northeast. Ephedrine is one of the main components of methamphetamine production. China is one of the world's largest producers and exporters. Despite stringent regulations, large quantities of ephedrine are diverted from legal pharmaceutical industries and smuggled into Myanmar. Hidden in shipments of industrial goods or transported through dense jungle trails, these chemicals then reach the infamous drug labs in Myanmar, where the processing of ephedrine into billions of Yaba pills then begins. Myanmar's destabilized government further exacerbates the rise of the drug trade. With weakened law enforcement and fractured governance, Myanmari drug lords and armed militias use proceeds to fund insurgencies and purchase illegal weapons. Coincidentally, there's an alarming influx of illegal arms into Manipur, a state already grappling with ethnic strife and insurgency.
Following days of extensive travel along the Indo-Myanmar border in the state of Mizoram, we have seen the challenges put before the law enforcement in the state while tackling the menace of smuggling of Yaba tablets from Myanmar into India. While the crackdowns had led to increased seizures, experts believe that the law enforcement in the state have only been able to scratch the surface so far. With Christmas and New Year around the corner, all the agencies in the state, be it the Narcotics, Excise Department, Social Welfare Department and the police, are active like never before. But will these initiatives put together be enough to curb the menace of Yaba in the state of Mizoram? We leave it here with this question. This is Anvish Srivastava with video journalist Gunesh Singh Vedi for CNN News 18 from Aizawl, Mizoram.
All right, let's bring you a little data on this entire story and a little bit more in terms of context. Let's take you back to 2023 when the UN Office on Drugs and Crime actually put out a report that highlighted a surge in exactly this drug production in Myanmar. And it's then that it said that it poses a very serious security challenge. Now, today's show, this report that our friend Anvit just brought us, our colleague Anvit just brought us, is one that focuses in particular on Yaba. However, this is an issue that actually contains and pertains to other substances too. The cultivation of poppy, that is key for heroin production, that has increased by 33% in Myanmar in 2022. It's reversed a downward trend that we were first seeing in 2014. Myanmar, and this we'll talk about in a little bit more depth, but Myanmar itself also has several economic challenges that have led to this problem growing. The economy in the country contracted by 18%. There was only a modest rebound, and then there's compounding problems that the country is dealing with: currency devaluation and inflation. What that's meant is that there's an uptick in the regions around it. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in just a second with our colleague Anvit. Anvit, we've seen drug seizures escalate in the surrounding regions. So I just want to walk our audiences. Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, they've all seen this, and they've all therefore seen an expanding of trafficking networks. Your report focuses in particular on this influx from Myanmar onto certain states. Just tell us first a little bit about what led you to create this report in the first place. What did you experience when you went on the ground?
See, you rightly pointed out that mostly the conflict hit areas which, the region around Myanmar also is facing continuous conflicts, and the change of regime in Myanmar and then following the conflicts in Manipur. This region has been under turmoil for quite some time. That is what led us to this area, the influx of illegal money, drugs, weapons and human trafficking that has been on the rise. Also, we have done similar stories from Kashmir earlier, so you will see a similar trend in these areas. Even if we talk about Myanmar, where we went to Indo-Myanmar border. We traveled across dozens of towns and villages in Mizoram, especially Champai district, and along with the Myanmar border, there's Tiao River that separates Myanmar from India. We traveled along the river. It's a long distance. This river covers at least 40-50 kilometers in Mizoram alone. So this area is very vulnerable when we talk about the drugs influx from Myanmar. Also, why Myanmar? Because the region around it, the methamphetamine is being highly produced in Myanmar. All the ephedrine comes down from China, from Southeast Asian countries, even from India. That is used, that has to be used for pharmaceutical purposes, goes into Myanmar, and then it is transformed into meth, and that then in the form of tablets like Yaba, or be it ecstasy, MDMA pills, it comes back into India. India largely has been a transit point. These drugs even further travel to Central Asia and Europe, where the prices are actually high. So just to give an idea, if a Yaba tablet would cost around 50 to 40 bucks in Myanmar, the rate changes as soon as it crosses border into India and goes up to 80 to 100 rupees. And when it goes to foreign countries, the price even goes up into dollars. It may cost rupees 1,000 to 800 a pill. So the price is one of the factors why people are indulging into. Also, the labor in this area is cheap. There are Burmese people who are involved. There are Bangladeshis who are involved in these clandestine manufacturing labs. All of these labs, as per the intel reports, are across the border in Myanmar and have been busted time to time. But following the regime change in Myanmar, situations have gotten worse. If we can talk about the data, the Mizoram police has made several arrests in this case and have seized huge quantities. In fact, the seizures have gone up from 548 kgs of meth seized in 2020. It has gone to 1631 kgs, in this year alone. And also caffeine, there has not been many seizures of caffeine, but this mix of meth and caffeine that produces Yaba, it has really become popular. One of the proofs it is that only this year 1075 kgs of caffeine has alone been seized, while previous years there had been no seizures of caffeine. So this is clearly indicative of the fact that Yaba is getting popular. Yaba is a drug that is a mixture of meth and caffeine, and it is highly getting popular, not just in India because it's a party drug. It keeps you high for 6 to 8 hours. It comes cheap and has a longer effect. Intoxication is stronger. It does not have any as lethal impacts as heroin or other synthetic drugs, but it is getting popular as a party drug, not just in India but also Europe, Central Asia and Southeast Asian parts.
Can you also tell our audiences, Anvit, a slightly removed question that will maybe give our audiences more context here. How similar is this story in this region to the very different story we saw play out in Punjab decades ago, where you had, because of political instability taking place around the border in Pakistan, to a filtration inwards of different drugs into Punjab, security forces trying to combat that problem. Is this situation comparable at all? Is it different? Just tell us a little more.
See, it is comparable if we talk of heroin. Largely, heroin is an opioid-based drugs, and because of the high production of opium in Afghanistan region, and after the regime change in Afghanistan, they had also come up with a policy that consumption of opium was banned. So, when the consumption was banned, all the opium that was being grown, that was being pulled out, and that is the reason why we saw cases like Mundra, Pipavav, and huge seizures on the western coast of India. India still, remained to be a transit point. All of this were further transferred to other South Asian countries and beyond. But like you mentioned, there are similarities if we talk about heroin, because heroin is an opioid-based drug. Also, opium is a major factor in Southeast Asia and in Myanmar too. Myanmar has been producing a lot of opium. There has been no control since the regime changes happened, especially since then. So there are similarities if we talk about heroin. But why we focus on Yaba is because Yaba is a new drug. It's a new trend. It has become dangerously popular, and meth also being a chemical based drug that has very dangerous impact, even though it does not have as lethal impact as heroin. But it certainly when we see its popularity growing not just in India but beyond, it really is a challenging part.
All right, Anvit, can we ask you to stay with us because you're providing us particularly important details. We'll keep coming back to you to understand more. We're going to